behaved and quieted, because once they're weaned, they're about the age that they can walk, and they get in a lot more trouble when they get mobile. I'm looking at you, Joshua. You're a troublemaker. But the other thing I have noticed in my own experience, I can basically only talk about family experience, because I haven't really done a lot else besides being part of a big family yet. But once they get to be a certain age, once they are weaned and getting older, with my siblings at least, they do get to an age where they're not necessarily behaved or quieted, but they're certainly more responsible. They're a lot closer to the first verse of this psalm. Their eyes aren't lofty, they're not haughty, they're not as demanding. They don't wake you up in the middle of the night demanding that you feed them and water them or clothe them or whatever. They learn responsibility. They learn how to behave themselves. And this is still what David is claiming to be here. He's not boasting to God, which is probably a very good idea, about, oh, I'm your mighty soldier, I've slain all your enemies, I've conquered your foes, look at how great I am and how good I've made your kingdom. He is boasting in what he knows is what got him elected king in the first place. He's boasting about his heart, about being a calm, quiet, responsible leader. And the third verse is kind of out of step with the first two. Let Israel hope in the Lord from henceforth and forever. Previous to this, it seems like David is speaking directly to God. It's that kind of worship song where he's not so much declaring God's goodness to other people, and rather speaking directly to God and saying how wonderful he is. But here, it seems like he suddenly goes to talking to his own kingdom, his own people. My own Bible says, verse 3 is exhorting Israel to hope in God, which continues the idea that it's him telling his people to behave to God. I'm not sure I agree with that, actually. Let Israel hope in the Lord from henceforth and forever. I think that's a continuation of the psalm he was already singing. He is praying to God, well, you don't really tell God anything, do you? He is asking that God would let Israel remain loyal, would hope in the Lord for henceforth and forevermore, not in David, as not haughty or lofty or exercising himself in great matters as David is. He still understands that Israel needs to have its faith in the Lord, not in its king. He knows David is a controversial figure, perhaps not generally speaking, but in this church, certainly, it seems like he gets picked on a lot. And it's understandable because David was not as upstanding as his reputation sometimes makes him out to be. But I do believe the Bible when it says that his heart was the same as God's, that he was a man after God's own heart. I honestly believe that, and it's mostly from Psalms like this. I think it's because David understood. He understood that he had flaws, that he was just a man, that he was not the Lord by any stretch of the imagination. That all of his successes, all of his greatness, his family line that God himself promised to him would rule over Israel forever, was all due to the power and majesty, not of him, but of the Lord.